Bienvenue, bienvenue, c'est le monde du Kombucha. Hi everybody. I am in tremendously great spirits this morning. Hello, Symbiotic. Thanks for waving hello. Nice to see you here. You guys, tomorrow is World Kombucha Day. I'm going to try to go back in my memory and remember which one this is. Third, fourth, fifth? We have been celebrating World Kombucha Day now for a few years. And today I'm going to share with you the history of kombucha, the history of World Kombucha Day. Yay, I love your vibe, Lauren. Thank you. And this is why I'm vibing. I'm in a high plane of existence. Because look, bacteria powered. Woo! So please, today is a great day to ask any questions you might have about the history of kombucha, where it came from. I did a ton of research on this topic for our book, The Big Book of Kombucha. I'm going to pull it off the shelf here and share some of these kombucha legends and stories. So I can't wait to share this with you. And of course, any questions, feel free to drop them here. But tomorrow, 2/21, February 21st, 2/21 is World Kombucha Day, the day we celebrate the mythological origins of where kombucha came from, where it came from. As you can tell, I'm super excited. Yeah, baby, because I'm bacteria powered. Bacteria powered. How are you bacteria powered? Drop me a little message today. Tell me what bacteria you've incorporated into your day today. Kombucha, kimchi, sauerkraut, yogurt, kefir, beer, wine, spirits, whatever it might be. Miso. Oh, Miso, happy. Miso, happy you are here. Here we go. We got the Big Book of Kombucha, 400 pages. That's what makes it big. This book has been out since 2016, and I was so grateful that my book anniversary is on International Women's Day. So coming up March 8th, we'll have another book anniversary. Let's see, 2016, 7 years. It'll be 7 years old. Yay. But kombucha predates that by quite a lot. And so that's what we're going to look at today here in our book, The Big Book of Kombucha. I really loved researching all the different information, the science, the history, the recipes. But I'm really proud of our timeline because part of the whole reason why I even started blogging about kombucha in the first place was I was frustrated by the lack of sourced information. You'd hear the same stories repeated again and again, but there wasn't necessarily any sourcing to it. And so that really made me want to figure out more about kombucha. And so I went to a variety of course, I've researched everything online. And then I went over to UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, and went into their libraries, specifically their Asian library, because I wanted to see if I could find the Shijiki, which is the Japanese records of history, their annals of history, to see if I could find if there was a Dr. Kombu who came in 414 AD to heal the emperor. So I'm just gonna find this here. You'd think I would have looked it up sooner, but that's not how I roll. I roll in the moment. I take the waves. Drop a 100 if you feel me on that one. Oh, here we go. Oh, yes, it's all here at the back of the book, of course. Oh my gosh, this timeline is really long. And in fact, you can see the whole image of it on our website, but it spreads over many, many pages. And it starts on page 334 of the Big Book of Kombucha. So where did kombucha come from? And why do we celebrate February 21st, 2/21 as our origin story for kombucha? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, in the kombucha timeline, we start all the way back around 6,000 years ago. And the reason we do that is because there are some evidence of jars containing fragments of fermented foods and drinks. And while we haven't necessarily identified any of those as kombucha per se, the fact that human beings have been fermenting foods is as old as human beings. In fact, one might even ask, Are we cultivating the yeast, or are the yeast cultivating us? Because the yeast have done a really great job of making sure that we know exactly what temperatures, what types of foods they like to eat, how to cultivate them, how to raise them. And of course, in exchange, we get things like beer and wine and bread and all kinds of things. So it's been a really harmonious relationship, this relationship we share with other microbes, with bacteria, with yeast. And then in the Bible, we go to about 1300, Boaz encourages Ruth to drink her vinegar beverage. So kombucha is an acetic acid ferment like vinegar. That's what gives it that tangy signature, flavorful punch. Now, of course, a lot of commercial brands out there have sort of lightened that flavor profile because that is not a flavor that most people are really comfortable with. However, my personal kombucha story is where I fell in love with that tangy brew. The flavors made me feel alive. The acids pulsed through my body. They said, you need me. And I said, I love you. And I need you to be part of my heart and soul. And so, my thirst outgrew my budget quite quickly. But truth be told, I was the girl sneaking the pickle juice out of the pickle jar. So I just had this real love of tangy. In fact, right now, I'm talking about, I just started drooling because I love those tangy flavors. In fact, the flavors of sour and bitter are the flavors of health and digestion. Now, it doesn't mean that we only want to consume bitter and sour because, well, actually, we don't want to. So let me finish that thought and I'll tell you the next thought I just had. Because I'm in the flow. I'm grooving with the flow. If you're flowing with me, drop a heart of 100. Let's see what you're up to. So, yes, I love sour. And I don't know that I would say I love bitter, but here's what I discovered. I had some digestive bitters. I was at a show, and the show had all kinds of vendors, and they were next to each other. So one had bitters and the other had sauerkraut. And so I was trying them in order. I tried the bitters, bitter on my tongue. Really great for digestion. So anyone who's suffering with digestive issues, of course, bitters is so helpful because it helps support the release of juices in your stomach so you can start to digest things. It really supports the liver and the gallbladder so that they can produce the acids you need in order to break down your food. Then after I tasted the bitters, I went and I tasted sauerkraut juice, which of course I love. And again, just thinking about it, I'm drooling already. But what happened was this magic moment in my mouth when I had the bitter plus the sour. Whoa, what flavor do you think happened? Well, I'll tell you, it was sweet. It was actually sweet. And so the flavors of bitter and sour, when we pair them together, are actually create a beautiful harmony. And so this is why when people say, well, what about putting citrus in my kombucha? Is that something that's not going to go well with it? It actually goes really well with it because those bitter, sour flavors create a lot of loveliness in our mouth. But in the Bible, they talk about Ruth drinking her vinegar beverage. And so could this have been kombucha? We don't know. But it's exciting to ponder that perhaps it has an origin so old, so old. However, what we do know is that in 221 BC, what we imagine we know, what we have purported to know, what has now been passed down through research paper after research paper as the actual origins of kombucha. So again, there's a part of me that yearns to go to Asia. 我说中文，为什么不？我应该有一天可以到中国去研究一下，看看是不是有没有什么正确，我们就可以保命的说一定就是从中国来的。可是我还没有机会到中国去看一看，研究一下。当然我必须有一些帮助我的人，要不然我就看不懂，我可能看不懂。虽然我会看字，可是有可能我看不懂。All right, in case you didn't know, I'm a polyglot. That was Mandarin Chinese. I majored in Mandarin in college and I lived in Taiwan. Ironically, I didn't discover kombucha until after I lived in Taiwan. And so I didn't really try a lot of fermented foods when I was there other than the ones that I had sort of already known about. In fact, there wasn't even kombucha available in Taiwan when I was there in the late 90s because it wasn't a commercially sold product. I know a couple of producers who are now making it and selling it in Taiwan. And it is becoming more popular again in Asia. Though ironically, they still have a trouble with the sour flavor, so they tend to be a little bit lighter flavor profile. But it is purported that the Qin Huangdi, so Qin, China. This is where the name China comes from. It's from the Qin Huangdi. Huangdi means emperor. Qin Shi, he's like the first one. So he was the emperor who united all of China. He took all the warring states, he brought them together. Now, of course, this wasn't a happy union forever, and there have been many wars and whatnot and changes, so forth. Hi, Fanny. And so it was purported, though, that in the Qin dynasty, the Qin emperor, so the Chinese are famous. They're famous for their desire to create longevity elixirs, and they will go into nature, right? Traditional Chinese medicine. They will look at animal body parts. They will look at herbs and things in their environment, and they're consistently trying things out, putting things together, seeing, hey, if I take a mixture of these natural elements, can I enhance my lifespan? Can I improve my life through consuming all of these ancient types of foods? Not ancient, but natural foods from the natural environment, these herbs, animal parts, whatever. And so we imagine that his inner imperial court created kombucha as a way to pursue longevity. And so it was kept a secret for many years. It was passed down through the court in the Forbidden City, Jinzhi Chengshi, and it was a well-kept secret for many, many years before it was ever released out into the public. And it was one of these things that was cultivated. So it's a tea ferment. It's essentially a tea vinegar, we could call it, because it is an acetic acid ferment. However, we're not fermenting it to the point where it's so sour we don't enjoy it. Now, that said, when people were making it back in the 80s, it was very sour. It's a much more potent beverage than we might be consuming today. And that was simply because the information you had was usually written on a scrap of paper given to you by a friend who handed you a baggie full of weird floaty stuff and said, that's the kombucha, here's how you make it. It was kind of like Amish friendship bread. It was like, people would pass it around and give it to friends, but you didn't really know much about it because there wasn't a body of information to support it. So 221 BC is when we imagine kombucha originated. So many years ago, Alex and I were talking about how can we create a way for everybody to rally around kombucha, to celebrate kombucha, to really just pay homage and be grateful for this amazing beverage that has transformed not only our life, but so many people's lives. And so World Kombucha Day was his brainchild, and we've been celebrating it ever since. Now, of course, my memory's failing me. Did we start in 2019, in 2018? I would have to go back and look. But suffice to say, I want to say it's the 4th or 5th annual World Kombucha Day, right? Time, it all sort of accordions, forwards and backwards together. But that's where we started it. So then when we look at the history, how did kombucha then spread? So I did, as I mentioned before, I went to UCLA, I went into their East Asian Studies Library, and I specifically went to the Japanese collection to look up the Shijiki, which is their world history. So they have their annals of history, which are actually traditionally written like on bamboo, pieces of bamboo that then were held together with string. Of course, that's not what I was looking at. I was looking at translations or versions of these written on paper. So I did find in these annals, because this legend has been around for a really long time, that there was a Korean doctor summoned to help heal the Japanese emperor Im-gyo, and he uses kombucha tea in his treatments. Okay, it tells me to go to page 140. And the reason I'm going here is because in the timeline I put the short version of his name, Kombucha, right? It almost sounds like kombucha, so there's a lot of validity for it to have potentially been named after this Korean doctor, Kombucha. Who is Dr. Kombu? And so, it's Kojiki. I've been saying Shijiki, I mean Kojiki. And it was records of ancient matters is what that translates to in the Japanese. And he recounts that a medically trained ambassador accompanied the yearly tribute from the kingdom of Silla. Now, the kingdom of Silla is Korea. No evidence exists that kombucha was involved. Instead of identifying this ambassador as Dr. Kombu, the Japanese text referred to him as Komu Hachimu Kamu Kimu. There's a lot of moos in there. Komu Hachimu Kamu Kimu. So while Kombucha is similar to kombucha,